and welcome to another episode of How to Be a Great PC. So, Brigade Burner 92 asked me the following question. How do you go about playing the opposite sex? It's an interesting question and one that treads very close to that terrible stereotyping kind of thing that we can get into trouble for these days. However, when you look at the question of how do you play the opposite sex, the question that you have to ask first is, well, why do you want to play the opposite sex? If it's a convention and you're randomly handed out a character sheet, well, then that's fine. The decision's been made for you. And later on in the show, we're going to handle exactly how you tackle the role of playing a female. But for those of us that are creating a character and have decided that we want to play the opposite sex, from what I can understand, there are really only a few reasons as to why you would want to do this. First and foremost on that list would be to try to see the world from a different perspective, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. Instead of seeing it as this macho male character where there's lots of expectation, if you are a female character, well, that gives you latitude to explore alternative decision-making processes. And we're going to get to those a little bit later. You might also choose to play a female character to make the game setting just a little bit more interesting. Let's say, for example, you're playing in Victorian England. Choosing to play a female character there has opened up a whole line of inquiry for you that you can follow as a female, but it has also locked down several avenues for you to pursue as well. For example, you can't be a doctor. You could be a nurse because, well, women in those days were just better suited to being a nurse rather than being a qualified doctor. There's just too much information to keep up in their little noggins, which of course they can't do. That's what you're going to encounter. It does allow you to certainly explore the system, but I would recommend against using it simply so you can buck the system. The Victorians won't budge. As it was famously once said by the Prime Minister, "I will never bow down to a female." Well, apart from Queen Victoria, that is. Another reason why you might want to play a female is perhaps because this is your great coming out moment. Or perhaps it is because you feel that you want to add some comedy to the entire event, and that you feel that by playing a female that it plays against you as a player, it plays against what you normally play, and it's something light-hearted because it's a once-off and you think it might be quite funny to play the dotty, crazy aunt, whatever the case might be. And perhaps you might choose it simply so that you're not shackled by the choices that you would normally make as a player rather than as a character. So as a player, if you're normally quite dominant, perhaps you want to choose a female character to force one of your other players to have to take the lead of being the macho dominant character. Well, that's also a perfectly valid reason. So now that we've explored why you might want to play a female character, and I feel I should point out as a disclaimer, I do not like playing female characters because I'm always worried I'm going to tread on toes, and well, they really are a mysterious sex to me. But perhaps you want to get in touch with your inner feminine sides. So, if we then look at how to approach playing a female character, what do we do? Where do we even start? And the first thing that we have to start with is we have to start with identifying what is the stereotype female character so that we can play against that. After all, unless you're going for the comedy angle, you are trying to get a different perspective brought into the game. So we need to identify what is it that everybody else is going to be expecting from you, the now female character. And of course I'm assuming that most of my audience are guys who want to play females, and this is almost the same for females who want to play males. And we can do another video on that if I have enough female viewership who are interested in my take on that perspective. Nonetheless, the stereotype that we have in our minds of females is, in my opinion, there are four of them. There is the damsel in distress, who runs around crying at almost every moment, can't make a rational decision, and really is just there to weep and look beautiful in the moonlight. Most of those roles are given to women in Hollywood movies, simply because the men need to seem as if they are heroic and capable. We have the defiant man-hater, who is independent and doesn't need a man to help her with anything, except for opening tough peanut butter jars. We have the mixture woman, who is both defiant and ready to take on the world, but she also just occasionally needs a big hug from a big strong man to tell her that she's just all right. And then finally, we have the mother, the caring, nurturing type, who is neither weak nor strong, but who gets on with the job. And if you look at Game of Thrones as a great example, and don't worry, no spoilers here, if you look at Game of Thrones, we have the full gambit of those kind of women in the show. And they give us strong and courageous, weak and tender, and often most of them go through different categories or waves of these. Now, obviously, if you're going with the defiant man-hater who's independent, you have to be aware that is this really going to allow you to explore the feminine condition? Because a giant, butch, defiant, man-hating woman is really just another man, basically, isn't it? Well, it is if you don't look for the subtleties. And that's what you've got to do when you're playing a female character, in my opinion. You need to look at the surface. Excuse me. You need to look at the surface, and these two ladies are in my show. It's played by women, and they're very different. You need to look at the subtleties that they bring. She's a giant warrior, she's a valiant bard, and yet when they are not strong, they can be quite weak. But it's a different kind of weakness. And in the case of the orc, her weakness is that of someone who is discovering that she is sometimes powerless and trying to deal with that. This one is discovering that she is powerless and that the world is simply so great and so big that she starts to realize her insignificance in it. It's different kind of realizations, and it's those subtleties that will allow you to play a female to a much better extent than just slapping on a stereotype and trying to run with it. So when we look at how do you now play this female that you've identified that under most circumstances she's a strong woman who has her own mind, but when she sees things with giant tentacles she turns into a simpering little pile of crying goo, well, that's fine, but now how do you actually play that? The very first thing is, do not put on a woman's accent. It will not sound good unless you are running for comedy. It doesn't work, trust me. Rather, instead of using your normal voice, simply lighten your voice. And instead of attacking the words, as you might do as a man, rather roll into the words, so that you're bringing a slightly softer side. Even women who are strong are more strong in the conviction of how they're saying things rather than in the way they say things. I certainly think of my grandmother, who was a very strong woman, and it is in the withering way in which she said things that her strength came through. Are you really going out dressed like that? That would make you certainly question everything about your existence. Overshare, perhaps. Nonetheless, do not do the female voice. Rather soften your voice and find ways in which you can roll into your words that are a little bit softer. Do not play the female character as someone who is a cold, logical, mechanical process. Yes, we certainly have those characters. We have females who are cold and who are logical, and I can think of several great examples. I can also think of great examples from the series like Firefly, where the mechanic, and of course her name has gone completely out of my head, the mechanic, she fixes the starship and she keeps things running. But she's also feminine and likes to dress in pink flowing dresses and have long hair. Very impractical for someone who's working with large gearing mechanisms that, spin at the speed of light. But that's who she is. So avoid the stereotypes, avoid the voice pitching, and look at how do women approach problems rather than men. And this is where I'm stepping on toes, I know, but if one looks at it from an evolutionary perspective, men are very goal-orientated. We were designed to go out, form a plan, find a mammoth, stab it to death, bring it home and eat it. Then shag the woman to make more men so we could go out to hunt and kill more stuff. Women, on the other hand, were required to look after the area that they were staying in and to go out in groups, Rather, it is safer to go out in groups and to gather berries and roots and look for ways of extending the food that was available to the tribe, and of course then looking after the children. This has, to a very large degree, prescribed our approach to life as men and as women. So, instead of looking at a problem from a logical, I will fix plan, I will hunt animal, kill it, eat it, shag it, I am man. Women are more about, oh, I'll take some of that, and maybe I'll try some of that, and can I help you carry some of that, and maybe we need to look after this at the same time, and can we solve that, and oh, remember, we needed some of these over here, and we needed some of that. It's a much broader approach to a lot of different problems, but the solution is not, right, I need 15 berries, I need 12 root tubers, the children will sit there for the duration of our entire hunter-gatherer experience, and if they move, I will hit them. There is no plan. There is a collective cloud of understanding and of exploration and of discussion. So when trying to play a female character and you're trying to explore the different perspectives, rather than immediately jump into a solution, look at other things, look around it, look to how you can support the other characters in the group. Whilst you're trying to solve that riddle, perhaps I can help make sure that we don't run out of food. Perhaps your female character can offer some suggestions, but, well, that's not her skill set. Her skill set is perhaps in tending to the wounded. So it is literally about trying to find the emotional support rather than the problem-solving support. And frequently I hear from the couples that I know that the man just wants to solve the woman's problem and she just wants him to listen, not to actually solve the problem, which to my mind doesn't make sense. But anyway, compassion versus logic is the buzzword that keeps coming up. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, whatever the case might be. It is a compassionate approach to life. Whether that woman is strong and independent and fiercely man-hating, she will still have some compassion for something. Whereas a man, whether he is man-hating, woman-hating, whatever the case might be, will still have a slightly more logical approach. You might want to fight against that and say, well, I'm going to play a woman who thinks exactly like a man. Well, then why don't you just play a man? And if you're a woman and you want to play a man who's just like a woman, well, why don't you just play a woman? And we're not even going to get into playing the homosexual roles, because that's a whole different kettle of eels where logic and emotion gets wrapped up in a little ball of pink taffeta. So, until next time, I hope this has given you some insight into how to play a woman and how to avoid making your woman a farce, and to try and get some understanding into the psyche of the woman. And I'm sure all of the women currently are looking at me going, you haven't got a clue, do you? Anyway, until next time, hit that like button if you want to see more gender bending and stereotype plastering. Hit that subscribe button and leave your comments below, because I would love to hear your thoughts on this particular subject. Until next time, happy playing.